All right, today we are going to be talking about my favorite books of 2021. As you guys know, I am an avid reader and super excited this last year because I finally achieved a long-held goal, and that is to read 52 books or more in a year. One a week. That's always been my goal. I've gotten really close before. I've gotten in the high 40s, and for some reason, something always came up at the end of the year that just held me back. So this year, I figured it out, I broke through, and I actually read 55 books. All right, so let's get into my favorite titles of the year. Now, it just happens to be 10. I didn't plan to make a top 10 list necessarily. I was just gonna pick my favorite titles. The books that really stuck with me, that just kept resonating with me, that there was just something about these titles that I keep coming back to in my mind. So I have them sitting here next to me in a nice little stack, and I'm really not going to go in any order, except I'm going to go from smallest to biggest, just because it makes a nice pyramid sitting here in this chair next to me. We are going to start with one ebook, though, that I don't have a physical copy. I couldn't find one in China, and that is called On All Fronts: The Education of a Journalist by Clarissa Ward. And I'll put the picture right here somewhere. All right, so Clarissa Ward is a CNN reporter, and she's a conflict reporter. She's a war correspondent, I guess. I'm not sure how she calls herself. I think she just calls herself a journalist, but her specialty is to go into these war-torn areas like Syria, like Afghanistan. She was in a couple other places, I can't remember. But most frequently, lately, you've seen her in Syria and Afghanistan, especially this past summer, in the summer of 2021, as the U.S. exited Afghanistan. And Clarissa Ward was there to bring us all those just terrifying and heartbreaking images. So her book is her memoir, basically. And it's how she got into the industry, and it goes through just some absolutely harrowing and heartbreaking stories throughout the course of her career. So if you're interested in journalism, if you're interested in like geopolitics, if you're interested in feminism, actually, this is a very empowering book. I recommend a lot of my female friends and acquaintances and people at work to read this title, because it's just the way she describes what she's had to go through. Not only is she in a war-torn country, risking her life, but then she also has to deal with just stupid sexism and some of the other stuff that just goes along with, unfortunately, being a woman in the world. So, On All Fronts by Clarissa Ward, absolutely one of my favorite books of the year. All right, next title is Turning Pro by Steven Pressfield. Now, Steven Pressfield is one of my writing heroes. He's one of my mentors in the art of writing. He's a novelist by trade, but he's really found his niche by writing some nonfiction, kind of how-to, inspirational, kick you in the ass, very short little books. You see, this is only, I don't know, 140 pages, something like that, and a lot of it is like this, just really short little pithy chapters to get you in the right mind space and mindset to tackle your creative work every day. And what I love about Turning Pro, so his first book, kind of nonfiction for writers, or for any creatives, not just for writers. He just happens to be a writer, but it's inspirational for any creative person. And his first book was called The War of Art. Now, I read that last year also. I've read both of these like 3 or 4 times. I tend to read them every year, every other year. They're just some of my favorite inspirational books about creativity. But this one is more about, like the title says, turning pro. So even though you're not paid for your art yet, even though you are maybe at the beginning of your creative journey, his philosophy is when you turn pro, meaning when you decide that you are going to be professional, your whole life will change in your creative work. So if you treat it like a part-time job, if you don't honor the passion, the fire within you when it comes to your creative pursuits, then you're never going to be fulfilled. So Turning Pro is kind of his treatise on how to basically get off your ass and create every day. So Turning Pro, Steven Pressfield, awesome book. All right, next book is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Now, another one of my favorite writers. In fact, I just got his newest book delivered today. It's called Courage is Calling. Hopefully will be on my best of 2022 list that I will film next year. but Ego is the Enemy is one of his older titles, and I started it many years ago, and then I just set it aside for whatever reason. I got busy. Actually, I started it on audiobook, and quite often I don't finish a lot of audiobooks, and there's something about holding a book, and even I read a lot of ebooks. I read a lot on Apple Books or on Kindle, and that's still okay because I'm still holding something. I'm holding, the iPad, and I can use my Apple Pencil and I can highlight things. As you see here, I mark my books up. I write in them. I take notes. I put these little flags here so I can go back and revisit some of the best work. And so anyhow, getting back to Ego is the Enemy, Ryan Holiday has made himself famous for really revitalizing the practice, the philosophy of Stoicism, and bringing it into the mainstream. And this book really challenged me to think about some of my behaviors, some of my actions, and especially when it comes to some of my relationships at work. And it has forced me to confront the fact that, the way I behave or the way I act or the way that I execute at work, is it ego-driven or is it driven for the right things? And this book really helped me this year. Had a tough year at work, to be honest. I mean, it's great. I love my job, but it was just a tough year. There's a lot going on, a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. And this book really helped me think through how best to deal with some of the complexities in the workplace. Of course, this is not just work-related. In fact, most of it doesn't even mention work. But through some stories around famous people and how they overcame their own personal ego to achieve, and there's stories about generals and sports stars and politicians in this book, and I don't know, it just really resonated with me. So if you are someone who thinks that maybe your self-image or your ego might be getting in the way of living your best life, doing your best work, achieving your dreams and goals, check out Ego is the Enemy, Ryan Holiday. Love this book. All right, next book and the first fiction title, and this is The Quiet American by Greene. Now, this book blew me away. In fact, it might be my favorite book of the year. I don't know. I'm going to talk about a couple others later. Clarissa Ward's really blew me away, but that was at the beginning of the year, so I don't really remember it as acutely. This one I just read this summer. It's an older book. I think it was written in the 1950s. And there's a movie with Michael Caine and Brendan Fraser that I saw many years ago, but honestly, it was kind of forgettable. I mean, it was a good movie, but I kind of forgot about it. But man, I loved this book. I was just in the mood for like a classic, well-written, good story novel this summer. I mean, I don't know how other ways to describe it. Sorry, I'm like stuttering here, but I was just in the mood for just a good story over the summer. And this book had always been in the back of my mind. So anyhow, ordered it, came to the house in a couple days, and absolutely fell in love with it. So it's set in the early 1950s in Vietnam, and this is kind of post-French occupation, but it's kind of pre-American War or Vietnam War as an American. We call it the Vietnam War. When I lived in Vietnam in Ho Chi Minh City in 2006, 2007, they refer to it as the American War. So anyhow, and it's this in-between stage in, and there's like some geopolitics stuff's going on. You don't really actually know what's going on until the end, but at its center is a love story, and it's an older man and a young Vietnamese woman, and then a young American man, the quiet American of the title. And what happens is that there's this love triangle that happens, and it's a heartbreaking book. It's actually a really good mystery, and I don't know, I absolutely love this book. I will read it probably again, and I'm also going to revisit the movie because now that this story is kind of in my brain and in my heart in a different way, I want to revisit the movie because, like I said, I saw the movie first, and sometimes I don't like to do that. I like to read the book first because I want to get that feeling that books give you. Sometimes movies just don't resonate as deeply as a book can. So anyhow, amazing book. Greene, Quiet American. I actually ordered 2 or 3 more of his titles. Are sitting back here in these, I don't know if you can see it, like there's these red books. There's like, in that stack, there's like 2 other Greene books because I was so impressed with this. So maybe I'll get to those this year. Anyhow, Quiet American, check it out. All right, back to another nonfiction book. And this was a bigger one, and it is How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. Now, subtitle, it's long, so I'm going to read it. What the new science of psychedelics teaches us about consciousness, dying, addiction, depression, and transcendence. This was a deep book on many levels. It's very detailed, as you can see. It's 600-700 pages, something like that. And, I got some notes here. And it goes into the history and now the rediscovery of psychedelic drugs. And, I was born in 1973, and when I grew up, psychedelics, drugs were just evil, evil, evil. I grew up in the 80s where the, Just Say No, the Nancy Reagan, the war on drugs. I just never got into it. I just never tried drugs, actually, until, I was well into my adulthood. But psychedelics, I've been reading a lot about it. And, I wrote a novel I published a novel in 2020, and part of the subplot of that book has to do with psychedelic drugs. So I did a lot of research, is my point. And, I came away really fascinated with, like DMT, ayahuasca, iboga, some of these other, drugs that have been used in traditional indigenous cultures for centuries. Anyhow, Michael Pollan is a really respected journalist, and this book details his personal investigation as a journalist, but also his personal investigation as someone who now has experience with some of these psychedelic drugs. So anyhow, really fascinating read. If you're interested in this type of stuff, consciousness, maybe if you battle depression, there's actually some really great evidence that this new science of psychedelics now can actually help, if not cure, some cases of depression. So this is probably more information than you need on something like that. But if you're interested in this stuff, like I am, honestly, I cannot recommend this more. Great book. In fact, I want to check out his newest book that has something to do with plants and like medicinal plants. I can't remember the title, but it just came out this year. Anyhow, I'll probably read that this year. So yeah, How to Change Your Mind, Michael Pollan, amazing. All right, next book. I'm not going to go too detailed into this because I already made a video about this. If you look at my YouTube channel, it's called 4,000 Weeks to Live. And that whole video was inspired by this book, and it is called 4,000 Weeks. Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Berkman. And it's a time management book, but not really. It's more philosophy. And it's how to think about time, and it's how to think about your life, and how to measure not just your productivity, but your fulfillment day to day when it comes to how much time we're given on Earth. And, the shocking and frightening and terrifying thing is that a lot of us get about average 4,000 weeks to live. And that just blew my mind this summer when I read this book, and I'd never thought about life that way. We get into this, I don't know, I think we kind of live in this constant state of denial. And I suffer from this a lot, to where it's, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do that tomorrow, that's next year. And sure, we can't do everything every day. There's no way. We got to make choices. I get that. But this book had a really great way of, forcing me or inspiring me to think about how I prioritize life, how I spend my time. What do I spend my time doing? Who do I spend my time with? So anyhow, check out that video. It's, a 10 or 15 minute video, and it's me kind of riffing and philosophizing on this book. So I recommend you read it, but watch my video on it. I'll link it here, and I'll put it in the show notes. But 4,000 Weeks, amazing. All right, next book, Mastery. I don't know if you guys can see it. This is like really reflective. It's like got gold foil, but it's Mastery by Robert Greene. I was going to say Graham Greene, but that was the Quiet American. Robert Greene. This is super inspiring for me. So basically what Robert Greene does is he profiles probably 10 or 15 famous, people across the world, and their stories of how they mastered their given either art form or, their job, their career, their, chosen profession, whatever it might be. And he breaks down how you, me, whoever, can master anything and what it takes. And it's really detailed. If you look how many flags I have in this book, it's just, I will definitely reread this book. I think, I don't know for sure, but Malcolm Gladwell, his Outliers book that talks about like the 10,000 hours and, to gain mastery in anything, be it if you're Michael Jordan or if you're a chess champion or a tennis champion or a violinist, whatever it is, you have to put in around 10,000 hours, which is around 5 years of full-time intentional practice, intentional study. And this book came out before Outliers, and Robert Greene goes into some of that. So I think Malcolm Gladwell was probably inspired by this book and then did his own research and took it deeper. But it's that type of book. So if you're interested in like Malcolm Gladwell type books, give this a shot. Give Robert Greene a shot. I think you'll really like it. In fact, this is more detailed, and this is more, it's almost more philosophical. I feel it's better written than the Malcolm Gladwell stuff. But not that that's bad. Like I love him. I got a couple books behind me by Gladwell. But I don't know. I just really, really took to this book. And I just finished it last month. So, this was one of my favorites of the year, to be honest. It was one that I will revisit. And I wish you could see it better, but it's black on gold, so it's kind of reflective. But yeah, Mastery by Robert Greene. Check it out. All right, next title is another novel, a fiction book, and it is When the Stars Go Dark by Paula McLain. When the Stars Go Dark by Paula McLain, yeah. I read this earlier in the year, and the reason I picked it up is because it got some great reviews, I believe in the New York Times or somewhere like that, where I read, a book review. And I don't know, it just seemed to be interesting. And it's a literary serial killer book, and it's extremely well written. And that's the thing that I loved about this book. I really fell in love with the main character. And, she's a detective, and there's this mystery in her past, and you don't know, but it has to do with her daughter, or maybe it was a son. I think it was a daughter. You don't really know if she lost the daughter or she ever had the daughter. You don't really know. But like, it's this mystery, and it slowly gets solved. But she's also researching missing girls. And it goes back to her childhood and how, there's a missing girl that was one of her friends. Anyhow, it's twisty, turny. It's set in a beautiful location, and the descriptions of nature, the description of like inner turmoil and heartbreak are just fantastic. So, this one, I think I read it in one sitting, maybe two. I think it was one sitting. I just went straight through this book. So awesome, incredibly well written. And I think that's what I really liked about it, is that it felt like literature with a capital L, but it was a serial killer thriller. So yeah, When the Stars Go Dark, Paula McLain, check it out. Okay, one of my favorite books of the year, and this one is a brick. This is a big book. This took me 3 or 4 days of straight reading. I mean, I was addicted to this book, but because it was so big, I basically did nothing for like a long weekend. Anyhow, and it's got a terrible title. I think that's why this book didn't sell that well, because the title is just not great. It just doesn't roll off the tongue. And I believe it's a quote from a Charles Dickens novel. I believe there's a sentence that he lifted this. So the title of this book is She Has a Broken Thing Where Her Heart Should Be by J.D. Barker. And I'll show you the cover here. And this book is Stranger Things meets It by Stephen King. And it's super cool. I just loved everything about this book, as a product, again, of the 70s and 80s. This I believe starts in the 80s, and, it's kids, and it's supernatural stuff, and it's, murder and mystery and love story, and I don't know, it's great. So it just really reminded me of It, and that was one of my favorite books that I read as a young adolescent. Not as scary as It, for sure. It's more adventure-based. That's where, like, the Stranger Things, it's more like, adventure, and it's funny, and it spans the lifetime of these two actually 3 main characters, and it goes from childhood to adulthood, and it's solving this really supernatural kind of crazy mystery, and you don't really know what's going on until the end. So excuse me, I really liked it. It wasn't perfect. It's probably a little long, to be honest. I think if the author had his way, he probably maybe could have trimmed some of it. But because I don't think it sold that well. I heard about it when it was coming out, and then I just heard nobody on all like the book forums and some of the book, like websites I go to, no one really, talked about it that much, but I loved it. So it's a big book, it's a commitment, but yeah, what the hell is it called? She has a broken thing where her heart should be. Terrible title, but great book. All right, final book of the year, and this is another one that I really loved, and I saved this for last because it's the biggest book, format-wise, and The Comfort Crisis by, what's his name, Michael Easter. And the reason I'm laughing so much is because this is a fake book. So if you guys don't know, I live in China, and 99% of the books that I order online in China are legitimate books from the publisher. This one is like a magazine. And I mean, it's complete. Every page is here. It's the full book, but it's a photocopy. And so apologies to Michael Easter, the writer. I did buy a copy on audio though. And that's actually how I read the book, is I listened to it. Because this is not, for whatever reason, this shape of a book, it's bigger than a hardcover. It's magazine size. And I think the reason that magazine articles are short is because it's not comfortable to read a book that is this size. I don't know what it is. It's just, it was annoying. So some of the books that I order, they come in this size, and there's no way to tell when you place the order because, of course, when you order on Taobao or JD.com or whatever, they give you a picture of the like legit book. They give you the ISBN number, which is the identifier barcode number. And I tend to do a little research, but anyhow, every once in a while you get a fake one. So Michael Easter, if you ever watch this, I did buy your audio, so I'm sorry that I got a bootleg copy of this. But yeah, The Comfort Crisis. Anyhow, what the book is about is the author argues that we're just comfortable. We're just too damn comfortable in our life. Everything's soft, everything's comfortable. Like, right now I turned off the heaters so it wouldn't affect the audio for the video, but I've had the heater pumping all day in my apartment. We've got lights at night to make sure that, nothing's too dark, and we don't carry heavy things. We have things shipped to us. We don't have to really go hunt our food for the most part. Some people still do, but the vast majority of humans now don't necessarily hunt their food. They just go buy it. So what he argues in this book is that that's actually not good for us. So we think it's a step in the right direction. We're advancing ourselves by, being more comfortable and having all these creature comforts and all these luxuries. And his argument is that we're actually getting sick and dying because of it. So what my favorite part about the book was not just that thesis. I've heard that before. There's not a ton of new information in the book, to be quite honest. But what he does is that the book is basically a story of him going on a hunting expedition in the Arctic Circle. Okay. So, from basically page 1 to the end is himself telling his story of how he had to survive, and he was with a couple friends, and all the hardships that they had to go through to prepare and then go on this expedition. But in between those chapters, he also then breaks it up with some scientific stuff that proves, why we're all getting fat, lazy, and sick is because we don't carry heavy things. We don't eat, unprocessed food. Most of our food is processed. And anyhow, so it's one of those books that makes you want to kind of go back to the gym and get off your ass and be more healthy, and maybe go for a walk, or maybe don't sleep with the heater on in your room. Just get a little bit closer to nature. Which, that sounds kind of funny as I'm sitting here in a 38th floor, apartment in a city of 25 million people where every convenience just comes to my door and I order everything, but I turn the heater off when I sleep, so it makes me feel like a mountain man, I guess. But anyhow, Comfort Crisis, Michael Easter. Get yours at a local independent bookstore if you can. Don't order it like I did and get a fake version. Please read. I don't care how many books you read. You don't have to read as many as I do. I read 55 this year. You don't have to read that much, but I want you to read. That's why I'm making this video. I'm giving you 10 titles that I think most people would love to start with. Okay, watch my video from last year. There's another 10, I think, or so, that are really great places to start. All I'm begging you to do is always be reading. Have a book with you all the time, either on your phone, either on your iPad, have your Kindle in your bag or your purse, have a book sitting by your bed, have a book sitting in the bathroom, have a book sitting, in your car if you have to go wait in line somewhere. If you have to wait on a friend, you're meeting somebody for dinner, they're not there, put a paperback in your pocket or read on your phone. Stop scrolling your life away. Get some wisdom in your life. Read some books, please. I'm begging you. If you do nothing else this year, I want each of you who sees this video to read more books than you read last year. If you want any recommendations besides these 10, DM me directly on Instagram. You'll see my Instagram thing down in the notes. Maybe I'll put it on the screen. You can direct message me. I respond to, I was gonna say 100% of people that DM me, but there's a lot of like scammers and spammers, so I don't always respond, but I mostly personally respond to most people who hit me up. So if none of these books seem to be of interest to you that I just presented, then totally cool. Hit me up. I'll give you some recommendations because I just want more people to read. All right, guys, so thanks for watching. Hopefully this inspired you to get more reading, more books into your life. If you enjoyed this, if you liked the content, please subscribe if you are not already. There's a like button that you could push. That would be great. And also, what would be really cool is if you like this and if you like this list, don't just write down the list and hand it off to a friend, but share the video. That would be awesome. I would really love that if you could do that, because I want to get the word out about reading. As corny and old-fashioned as that sounds, I'm super passionate about it, as you can tell. I've got hundreds of books in my apartment. Actually, I counted them the other day because somebody asked me at work, and I was like, I'm going to count my books. I have over 700 books in my apartment, and this is after donating all of my books before I moved to China. So in 2015, in the summer of 2015, before I moved to China, I donated all my books to a local library because I didn't want to store them, and I didn't want to take 2,000 plus books with me. So, if you think about 2,000 to 3,000 that I had in the United States that I donated to a library, they thought I was amazing. They greeted me like a returning war hero because I just had all these pristine condition, most of them are hardcover books. And then I've got another 700 here physically, and then I probably have another 100 on Kindle and probably another 100 on Apple Books. And I just want people to have more books in their life. They look cool in your house. They make you a better person. They make you a smarter person. There are studies that show that you actually make more money the more books you have in your house. And it's not just because you rub the book on your face and you just get rich. It's because people who have books in their house are usually more educated. They take their passions more seriously. They take their work more seriously. They take their self-development more seriously. So get some books in your life, please. I beg you. Thank you for watching the video. We'll talk next time.